I know I said I was gonna be consistent. I'm sorry. I'm trying. It's hard. Ugh, guys. Ugh. Also, do you guys like my bunny beanie? I made it like last week. And it's like really cute. I really like it, and it goes with my shirt. So. Okay, this week my laptop will be in the shot because, well, in frame because I have like points that I need to reference from. Anyways, hi, I'm your host, and welcome to the Rambling Podcast, where I, your host, talk about my thoughts, feelings, and opinions on different things. Last week, I held a poll on my Instagram, which, by the way, you should check out so that you too can, participate in these kinds of things, where I put a poll on my story on Instagram. And I asked people like, "Hey, here are some topics that I have planned, but what would you like me to talk about like in my next episode?" And people were like between I think it was something else. I don't remember the other topic anymore, but the truth about your 20s. And I know, I'm 21. What do you know about being in your 20s? Well, honestly, not a lot, but you know what? My opinion is still valid and still counts. So, I just want to talk about more so the idea of entering into your early adulthood and what the experience really is like, because trust me, it is not what you think it is. So whether you're already in your 20s, whether you're about to turn 20, or whether you're a teen in high school, or whoever you are, and you want to know what it's like entering into adulthood, I hope that this video can help you gain a little bit of a perspective on that. The 20s are usually the time that everyone's trying to like scratch off things from their bucket list. Like they're trying really hard so that before they turn 22 or 23, or even like their next birthday, they're like, "Oh, I didn't do all of these different things." And I don't understand why. But then if you look at the like cultural context, depending on what culture you come from, I think that the West and in South places in South Asia, in my experience, often have this idea that when you're 20 is like your peak. And you have to become ultra successful and super, super rich and really happy and everything that you're supposed to do within a lifetime, and you have time in your life to do, you have to do it in your 20s. And it's obviously a lot of pressure. I'm going to start off with my experience when I turned 20. It's really brief. It's not anything like, "Oh, wow, like I had a wow experience." No. I turned 20 in 2001. 2001? I was born in 2001. What the heck? I'm clearly very disoriented if you couldn't already tell. I turned 20 in 2021, and I remember like the days, or actually the month, a month before my birthday. My birthday's in December. A month before my birthday, like everybody who I knew who either had already turned 20, or the adults like in my family were kind of asking me like, "Oh, you're turning 20. How do you feel?" And like it wasn't the "how do you feel" like, "Oh, do you feel excited? Are you happy that you're turning 20?" Like no, no, no. It was more so in a tone of like, "Oh, like you're turning 20. You should probably be having an existential crisis." And I'm just sitting there like, no. And like I was really confused because everybody was kind of like asking me this question. Like everyone I knew that I met before my birthday was asking me like, "Oh, how do you feel about turning 20?" And every time I would be like, "Oh, like I feel fine, everything that I wanted to do by the time I was 20, I've done. I'm really happy with like everything. I'm pretty calm about it." And everybody like looked at me a little bit confused, like, "What do you mean you're calm?" Obviously, they didn't say this like out loud, but like I could tell that there was like a sort of like confusion. They thought I would be having an existential crisis, a midlife crisis, or something, something. I don't know. Because like everybody was kind of like asking me the question over and over, like, "Are you sure you're gonna be okay? Like turning 20 is like a big thing and yada yada." I'm like, "Yeah, but like it's not that a big deal. It's just another year. I'm still dying. Slowly, but still dying." So I don't really get like the whole why were people were sort of expecting me to, I don't know, have a freaking meltdown or something. And I didn't really like it because I don't know. I don't know. So if anybody has any idea of why people asked me that question of like, "Oh, how do you feel about turning 20?" Great. And yeah, so somebody like let me know what the hell like I'm supposed to be feeling because I don't know. So that's my experience with, you know, actually turning 20 and being considered like a young adult who, older adults think I don't know how to do anything. So that's great. Moving on. One of the points that I wrote down in like the my notes is like we are constantly surrounded by messaging that our 20s will be the time of our lives. This is when we peak, that this is the moment we will be the most beautiful, rich, successful, etc. Again, this is I think what the expectation becomes. There is this expectation that when you turn 20 is when you have to get your shit together, that you have to understand that like, oh, you're not a child anymore, which we already knew. It's not like, when you turn 20 you're like, oh yeah, everything's going to be the same. No. Anybody who's turned 20 has already had an existential crisis prior. um this is just oftentimes people even when they're turning 20 have midlife crisis. Like this is nothing new. But oftentimes I feel like older adults, parents, aunts, uncles, there was a motorcycle like passing by and it's really freaking loud. I don't like that. You're ruining my video, man. Back to the point. Like older adults, family members, or even like friends who are older kind of question you and pressure you into thinking that like, okay, this is the moment. Like you have to turn your life around, that everything that you've ever wanted or everything that's socially acceptable to want, you have to achieve before you turn 30. Because when you turn 30, you're basically dead. And I don't really understand that concept. I think I've said it like 3 times now, but I really don't get it. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me in my head. I also wrote down that society is obsessed with the idea of telling young adults that this is the moment to do it all, do it well, and be successful. Meaning, go to uni, but also work the best job, have a high salary, love your job, have a large friend group, but also have a romantic partner, and also fit into beauty standards, and don't forget about your family and vacationing in Europe. Um, I think that when in high school, like when you go to high school and you're like about to graduate, people start talking, like uni and uni and uni and uni and you gotta go, you have to go, college is a big thing and like education, yada yada, whatever. Like they don't really think that, oh, high school was really hard. High school was really difficult, and as a student who did A levels and Edexcel, and I hate you, Pearson, um, after like having been a student who had to work their ass off to be able to just pass. No, we're not talking A's and B's, y'all. Nuh-uh. I'm talking just pass. I was studying 10 hours a day for months just to pass exams. And then only to pass those exams, graduate high school without a graduation, which I will say was, the school's fault, but whatever, moving on. um, Having graduated from high school, only to have this pressure on top of you of like, oh, you have to start admissions and you have to like start sending college applications and make sure that you get into a good uni and you have to decide immediately what you want so that you can start university in like 2 months' time. Tell me that's not overkill. Tell me that's not literally, it's a system created to burn out students. It's a broken system. We all know that, but it's also a system that burns you out significantly to the point where students don't have time. Like you don't have the time to think about what you really want because high school is you don't pick out subjects oftentimes, or even if you do, maybe it's not necessarily exactly what you want to do. But university is the moment where you get to pick that. And no one said, and like good decisions take time to make. You don't and you can't make a good decision if you don't have time to make them. And that's why a lot of people, when they're young and they're 18 and they feel this pressure of like, oh, I have to go to university, I need to pick something, I have to get my life together, because that is what society is telling me. They pick something without genuinely thinking about all the pros and cons of picking that subject or picking that career path. And so you have people who are finishing their, college or university and completely regretting what they studied because it truly wasn't what they wanted to study, but they didn't have the time to truly think about it. I definitely think that students should have like time. You don't have to take necessarily a gap year, but at least having like a 4 to 6 month period to just relax, de stress, get over burnout because high school's really rough, man. Like the education system really is screwing everyone over in a lot of like places. I don't know, there are different, school systems and some are better than others. I won't say that that's not true, but like at least for me and people that I know, always felt like there was like time was of the essence, that you had to have everything put together and there was no time to actually think about it, to actually take the actions towards just being a human being, not always stressing out about, oh, like all I ever am is the grades that I get in like in my educational institute, right? And that's the issue we have in society, which is like adults, especially who are in the education system, are pressuring 17 to 18-year-olds into thinking that, all you are your grades, and all you ever will be is how well you do in university. And that's going to guarantee you a job in the future, which we all know that's not true because job security is a lie. So, just to put into perspective, this is what society is obsessed with telling young adults and teens right from the get go, like right from high school. Not even high school. Sometimes in other schools, it's like, some places like Korea and, East Asia, and even in South Asia, like Pakistan and India and Sri Lanka and Bangladesh, like sometimes they also be telling children, like right from like kindergarten and primary school or elementary school, however you say it, that like, you have your dream, you have to work towards like you have to work towards the like superior education to like actually like university or college or anything that can give you a good career path and a good job and a high paying salary, which is another thing. Just because you study something doesn't necessarily mean that you're gonna have a high salary or like, you know, you're gonna work in that field or even have some sort of job security or anything at all. Like all of these things are very relative to a lot of other factors, especially the labor market of the niche or the type of field that you're going to be working in, as well as like the economy and like you know unemployment levels and all of those economic terms that I don't remember anymore, but you get my point. Like like there's so much that goes into like actually having a job and having a good job and job security and high salary. And just because you work in something again does not guarantee that you're going to have job security and a high salary. I think that the best um example is in Pakistan. In Pakistan, you only have three options to like, a job. Doctor, engineer, या फिर तू छत्तर बन के घर से बाहर निकलो. Like literally there is no in between. In Pakistan, if you want to have a job and you are going to university, you can't study anything else. Or like socially, again, in the social acceptance bubble of things, you are only allowed to study a certain amount of subjects, which is like again, medical, medical karna, and then engineering, anything within engineering or accounting or law, and that's I think about it. Anybody like me who went out of that like framework is a complete disappointment. And I do not doubt like I could go to Pakistan right now and everyone will ask me like, "Oh, what are you studying?" And I'll be like, "Oh, I'm studying publicity or like, advertising, marketing, whatever," because sometimes people don't really understand the term publicity. Um and they'll be like, "Oh, why didn't you like do medical? Why are you not gonna become a doctor or something?" Like literally the amount of times I've been asked why you don't want to be a doctor in my family is ridiculous. But anyways, that's not the point. The point is that even like going outside of the framework of what you should study, is also a pressure because then you are pressured into thinking like, okay, I don't actually want to be a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer or an accountant. Ew, accounting. Ugh. Um, sorry, no offense to my accountants. Um, like if I want to go outside of that, I have to think about like, my family and how people are going to think about that and like, what are people going to say and all of those stupid questions. But like if you live in a society where that's like common thinking, you too will be absorbed into thinking it unless you've worked on, just not caring. But more often than not, that's really hard to do. And it's a whole story that I could talk about in a different episode, but just to give you a little bit of perspective, like, it's not even just you go to uni and that's it, and you get to pick whatever. No, it's you have to go to uni and you have to study something specifically that has either already been picked out for you by your entire freaking family, or you have to pick something that you know is not going to get backlash from society and your family's going to look bad in reputation in society. So, there's external pressures, including, there's external pressures involved constantly for a student and somebody who is a young adult in society who's just about to learn what the real world is. What I also read was like love your job, right? So love your job. I want to do a separate like video on this, but I think that it would be great to like talk about it in this moment, which is like the amount of times I've heard my professors in university here in Costa Rica say, "Oh, if you love what you're studying and you love what you do, you're never going to work a job in your life. You're never going to work in your life." Like, that is a big fat lie because a job is still a job. And you're still, just because you love what you're doing, like, I love what I'm studying. I love publicity. I love the whole marketing and advertising aspect of it. And, creative strategy, design, all of that stuff. Like, I love it. But a job is a job. And that means, yes, you're going to love what you do, but there are going to be good days and there are going to be bad days. There are days where you don't want to go to work. There are days that you're going to love going to work. There are days you're going to have problems with coworkers or a problem with your boss or, all of these different factors that go into it. Just because you love what you do does not mean you're not going to work in your day, work a day in your life. It is. And that doesn't mean that you love your job any less, but also there are times where you won't love your job, where maybe the conditions or working conditions of your job are really bad and you hate it there and you want to move as fast as you can, but maybe the circumstances in your life don't allow it. So, again, socially, it's not acceptable to not like your job, but it's also like in the case that you are doing something in the field that you love. But if you don't like it, then like you will be criticized for not liking it. Again, something I don't understand. Because there's so many different factors. But anyways, moving on. Having a large friend group. Having a large friend group is not easy. Trust me, I have tried. I'm in my third year of university. This is my third and final year, hopefully. um, I'm set to graduate this year, and I will tell you that in my 3 years of university, I am still to make one friend. Like I have not met, like, I know people obviously who are studying the same major, who I have worked with, so on and so forth. You get to know people, you become acquaintances and like contacts. Yes, I agree. That is, I agree. Like, this is something that is very natural to happen in university. However, making friends in your 20s is really difficult. It's very difficult because, it's not like your friendships in high school where you see each other every day, where you take classes every day, where you're literally sitting next to each other for 8 hours a day, and you don't have to stress about like certain things, like maybe you moved out like I did. So you don't have to worry about like rent or, paying bills or, when's my next income gonna be like in my bank account. All these things, like, you don't have to think about them when you're younger in high school. Of course, there are different circumstances. I'm just talking about, the vast majority. Obviously in like different places. This is just a hypothetical example. There are different factors, and when you're older and when you go to university, it's not as easy. You don't have classes with everyone every day. And sometimes it's harder to click with people, and you have to take more time to actually speak to them or to go out even. Like making friends in university and making friends outside of like school is difficult. And this is something that they don't tell you. I was definitely told my entire life by adults that like high school is like, it is what it is, but university, you get to pick what you want. You get to pick, your friend group. You get to make friends that you're going to really love. You're going to have, lots of fun. And although I'm having fun in university, I'm having fun more in an academical sense or like academically. Academical is not a word, I think. Like I'm having more fun academically with like my subjects and so on compared to like socially. Like I barely have a social life, and although that's not a bad thing, like it's not what I was promised. Like movies and TV shows were like, "Oh yeah, university is going to be the time of your life." And although I'm not doubting that it is for a lot of people, it definitely hasn't been for me, and I definitely feel like I should have been warned about that by the adults in my life who had already been through that phase of their life. I wish that they would have been like, oh yeah, I had the time of my life, but hey, you know what? Stuff doesn't work out sometimes. Everybody has different experiences. Also, I think that our generation, specifically Gen Z, um, we got like handed a part of like, we were handed the panini. They were like, oh no, worldwide outbreak of virus and all of these different things. And we were shut in our homes for like almost 2 years, and we had to take classes virtually. And so obviously you're not gonna like, I know people are like, oh yeah, I have tons of online friends, and I don't doubt it. I have online friends too. But having online friends is way different to making friends in university while you're taking virtual classes. I don't know. I'm sure that a lot of people have made friends like that, but I have not. Um, so again, everybody has different experiences with making social circles. Please note that I'm a very introverted person. I'm an introverted person. I have issues with social anxiety. I have severe social anxiety. I don't know how to interact with people very properly. So obviously that does affect my experience with friends. But what I'm trying to say is that making friends in your 20s is not easy. You have to go out actively to look for people, to talk to people, and to also realize that you're probably going to be rejected a lot and that all of your attempts may not be fruitful. Like, just because, like, out of 10 to 20 people that you talk to, maybe one might stick around. And this is just fact. This is sad, but it's true. And that's okay. It takes time to make friends, it takes time to get close, it takes time um to just really build bonds, and that's completely fine, but that's something that I wish somebody would have told me before I turned 20. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about romantic partner after this, but beauty standards, and don't forget about your family and vacationing in Europe. So I think vacationing in Europe has a lot to do with like the high salary thing. So I'm not going to go into that right now. Don't forget your family. I think this is very important with the romantic partner aspect, so I'll get back to that later. And beauty standards. I think beauty standards, especially when you're in your 20s, is for women at least. I'm not going to talk about men because I personally don't have that experience, nor do I know a lot about that topic, but on the aspect of, on the women's side of things, is like you have to peak. You have to be the most beautiful you've ever been in your 20s. Um, your skin has to look like glass. You have to have no pores. And on top of that, you always or should prefer to wear makeup. And it can't be too much makeup. It has to be light makeup. So, no makeup type looks. And at the same time, you have to be attractive and fit into beauty standards of the place that you're staying in. But at the same time, you can't be, promiscuous, or you can't be, obvious that you're trying to fit into like beauty standards and so on and so forth. And I think it's really weird because this is also the time where people are like, oh, like, oh, you should appreciate it right now, and you should appreciate being young because later, your skin, it like droops and like wrinkles and stuff like that. And they like adults in my life who are women have told me like, oh, appreciate that you're turning 21 because later you won't want to tell your age. And I'm just sitting there like, what the hell does that mean? What are you trying to say? I remember on my last birthday, I was at an aunt's house, and somebody said that to me. Like I think a family member said that to me. I'm not gonna specify who. Um, but she said like, oh yeah, like appreciate that you're 21 now because later you won't want to say your age. So you're gonna be like, oh yeah, I'm like 25 when you're actually 45, and I'm like, honestly, I don't want to get to a point where I want to do that. Like, I want to be proud and happy that if I'm 45, I'm 45. I think that's a beautiful thing. I think aging is a beautiful thing because, that means you've lived a long time, you have a lot of experiences, you have a lot of, you know, knowledge about the world. And I think it's just a nice thing. I think it's great. And I said that, like, literally on a table and on, like, a dining table. Like, we were all having coffee. And it was like, majority of my family was there. And I remember, like, the men were like completely chill, but all the women out sitting on that table, like, they hit on, okay, like literally, they were like so hit on. Hit on. How do you say hit on, like in English? Like shocked. Yes, they were all shocked because they were like, why would you say that? It's not like I'm not proud of being old or older than other people. Yada yada. It's just like this is just a casual joke. Um, and like after that, I'm a very non like like I don't like to make certain conversations because I know that those conversations are gonna go nowhere. So I don't bother with certain people, especially when there's a lot of people. Mm-mm. I don't start debates. But in my head, I was like, yeah, that like in every joke, especially when they're like self-depreciating sort of type jokes, there's always a truth. And the truth is that when you say like, "Oh yeah, I'm turning 23," when you're actually 40, um there is a little bit of like an insecurity there. Like you might joke about it, but like one time, yeah, you can like be like, "Oh yeah, it's just a joke." But when it's more than once and you say it every time you have a birthday or every time that, somebody asks your age, then that means that there is an insecurity there and that you're not happy about being older and aging. And I know that there's a whole, like, debate on that and, like, society and so on, but, like, there is this idea that the older you get, the, like, less beautiful you are. And I don't believe in that personally. And I think that because of those kinds of people in my life, at least, there is almost like this sort of pressure of like, okay, like, I can't, like, right now I have to be the most beautiful I've ever been because later I won't be. So, like, this is the kind of like insecurity almost that's like being seeded into me and my self image. And I think that that's not a good thing. I don't think that we should be encouraging, you know, young adults and people in their like early 20s to be, feeling like, okay, yeah, right now I have to be the most beautiful because later I won't be. And what if I'm not the most beautiful right now? Not saying that you're not beautiful as is, but what I mean is like under social beauty standards, like, like the beauty standards that are set in your culture. Like, what if I don't fit into that? What if I never fit into that? And what if I spend all of my 20s trying to fit into that standard and I never do? After my 20s, I won't fit into that. And it's like this constant, like, bad self image. It's creating a bad self image, and I just don't like it. And I think that that is something that we have to be very careful. If you're listening to this, please be careful with what people tell you. Like, if people tell you that shit, like, don't listen to it. It's not true. You're beautiful as is right now, and you always will be. Okay? Like, there's no debate. No one can ever tell you anything else. It's true. You're beautiful now. You will always be beautiful. And this is just something that we have to keep reminding ourselves that beauty standards are a lie. That aging and wrinkles and not having clear skin is completely normal. That is how we're made. Human beings, this is natural. Okay? It's natural. There's nothing wrong with it, and just because you have them does not make you any less than. You're beautiful as is, and I hope you remember that. Getting into the romantic partner of side, like the romantic partner thing. Um I don't understand. The romantic partner thing I think is also something that's very glorified in movies and TV shows. I don't know. I think also in real life, but I feel like TV and media in general promote this idea that in your 20s, like you're young, you're free, you can do whatever you want, and why not do that with like, just falling in love. And I'm not saying that falling in love is a bad thing. I don't think it's like a bad thing at all, but I think that there are certain limits to it. I don't think that you should just fall in love for the sake of falling in love or have a partner for the sake of having a partner because everybody around you has one. Actually, fun fact, I'm filming this on Valentine's Day. Um so I guess this is like a very fitting topic for this specific day. Um, but like yeah, I've like today more than ever is Valentine's Day is the 14th. Everybody's people who have like who are in a couple like they go together, they go outside, they have dates, yada yada. Good for you. Great, you do that. But it's also like sort of like a reminder for single people or people who are actively choosing not to get into a relationship or even more so like just people who have not found a person yet to feel like, oh, I feel left out because all my friends have a boyfriend or a girlfriend or I need to find someone. But it becomes almost like it doesn't become almost like, oh, I want a fulfilling relationship in my life. It's more so like I just want a boyfriend for the sake of having one so that I have somebody to spend the 14th Valentine's Day with, not so much because I actually want the relationship and I want to deal with everything that that entails. I think people kind of forget that. I think your 20s are, a very big part of just figuring out who you are because oftentimes this is the first time that you're actually leaving, or at least some people move out from their houses or they're more involved like in activities outside of the house. And this is also the time where you start to form your own opinions and thoughts and, values and principles outside of what you have been taught for your entire life. Um, like it is the time where you kind of like, yeah, you understand some of like your parents' teachings, but sometimes you decide like, okay, yeah, my parents taught me this, but it's not necessarily what I believe. And I need to figure that out for myself. And I think that your 20s are that time to be figuring out things by yourself. Not to say that you can't do that with a romantic partner or anything like that. Please don't get me wrong. All I'm trying to say is that your 20s are meant to be figuring out what you want to do with your life, how you want to do it, um, why you want to do it, and who you want to do it with. Whether that be with a romantic partner or not, whether that be with your friends, whether that be with your family, or whether that just be by yourself. Um, there is just this time that you have been given to mess up. I think your 20s are meant to mess up. You are meant to like just be like trial and error constantly. Like, oh, this didn't work. I'm going to try this. This didn't work. I'm going to try this. This did work. So I'm going to keep doing this. Or maybe I like how this worked, but I need to tweak a couple things and adjust them. I think that's what your 20s are really meant for, to just figure out what you want to do, how you want to do it, and who you want to do it with. Um, and I think that media and the people around us are constantly like giving us this like the amount of times I've been asked like, oh, like when like in Pakistan at least like in your 20s you have to, especially for women, you have to get married. There is no like way you can say like no, you have to like no, you have to get married. Like you can't say otherwise. You can't say that you don't want to get married. You can't say, "Oh, I don't want to get married now." In fact, people are oftentimes, at least back home, I know that a lot of people like as soon as they get out of high school, their parents are already looking for like, suitors. And like, um they're usually like depending on each family, but some families don't really consider a woman's education as important and so immediately they start looking for suitors, and like the girl will go to university while she waits for her parents to find her someone. This is a very big thing and it's totally separate topic, but there is that like pressure from adults in society in general of, in a lot of places in Pakistan it's like finding a husband. Here in Costa Rica it's finding a boyfriend. Like the amount of times I've been asked like, oh, do you have a boyfriend? And it's like that is like literally none of your business. Like literally random people will come up to you and one of the first conversations you're gonna have, they'll be like, oh, how are you, what's your name, and like how old are you and what are you studying, oh, do you have a boyfriend? And you're just like, how, first of all, how is that any of your business? Second of all, why? Why do you care whether I have one or not? Like, it's so annoying when people, and when you tell them, like, if you tell them yes, they're like, oh, good for you. That's so nice. And then if you say no, they're like, oh, why not? Like, they look at you with pity. And in Pakistan, it's the same thing, but with like a husband. Like, if you're already 25, like, girl, time is ticking. Your time is ticking, and your biological clock, it's ticking too. You're never gonna have kids, as if every woman wants kids. Starting there, and all of these different things. And I feel like it's just the romanticization, if you will, of having a romantic partner by both media and society just doesn't make sense to me. If you want to be in a romantic relationship with your in your 20s, great, you do you. If you don't want one, that's completely okay. And if you haven't found one, that's okay too. Like, let's just be and let be. Live and let live, y'all. Live and let live. So now that I've done that rant, um I want to talk about. Well, I have a lot more to talk about, but I feel like this podcast episode is gonna be like really long. So maybe I'll talk about these things later or briefly. But briefly, I will mention the glorification of hustling in our 20s. Like I said, you need to find a job, you need to get a high salary, you need to, have a house and a car and all of these like material things. And I think that it's socially acceptable. I don't know how much it is in Pakistan, but here in Costa Rica, my cultural shock was um, here in Costa Rica, my culture shock was very much so that like people in their 20s, like they're studying, but they're not just studying one major. No, they're studying two majors, and on top of that, they're like, working a full-time job, like they're working a full-time job. And on top of that, they have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and on top of that, they have to take care of their families. And on top of that, they have to do like, usual like adulting things, going to the bank, cleaning the house, cooking for themselves, or they're moved out and they have pets and so on and so forth. Like, there is this idea that that's okay, that that you will be successful if you like. The definition of success in your 20s is if you're always busy. The more you have to do and the less time you have to like just sit down and relax, the better. Because taking out time for yourself, sacrificing your health, your mental health, and potentially burning out really, really quickly is not worth it. Like, it's that's put to a side. That's like, oh, you're 20. You don't have to worry about your health. You don't have to worry about like literally um anything else, right? You don't have to worry about, your health, or working out, or, taking care of your mental health, going to therapy. No, no, no. You have your 30s for that. Right now you have to figure out all the material things in life, and that's just something that I don't really get. And I feel like it's really toxic. Hustle culture in general is very toxic, but I feel like we should not promote that. Um, yeah. Next point I have here is it gets lonely sometimes. I think this is more referring to my point of like, uni and not making friends. I think that, especially in my case, that I moved to a whole new different country. And even though it is my home country, I've never lived here. Like have always come here to visit my grandma and my family, like aunts, uncles, cousins, and extended family. But I've never lived here until like now. I've lived here for almost 2 years. Like, I've been living here for a year and a half. Um, and although it's been great this entire time, like, uh, it does get lonely. You don't really understand a lot of like, at least in my case, I don't understand a lot of like cultural cues and certain like traditions. Um, and like I'm very different as well. Like, I am half Pakistani, half Costa Rican. I grew up in the UAE. I'm a third culture kid, so like I have a mix of a lot of cultures and diversity. Like, I've been exposed to diversity. Um, and I have like there's religious differences as well, and like thinking like mindset differences and perspective differences. And so there's people who don't really understand me, so people kind of get like frustrated, and they're like, oh, I don't really want to like socialize with her too much because she's just too much. She's too much to handle. I don't really get her. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to bother. um no one has obviously like said that out loud, so I'm just assuming, which I know I shouldn't do, but this is just how I feel in regards to like the socializing aspect. To the next point of the different paths everyone takes, high school friends graduating earlier, getting jobs, getting married, etc. Um, in my experience, I know I have so many experiences. Wow. No, I actually don't have a lot of experiences. um, but there was a bit of like issues. There were a couple issues with my my high school documents, sorry. So I didn't have the right documents to get into university immediately after graduating. It was a whole problem. I had an unintentional, accidental year and a half gap year. I was not happy about it, but sometimes life works in mysterious ways, I guess. It all turned out well, but obviously, I was seeing, my other high school friends, people who I still am friends with, they were going into university like immediately. Summer vacation was over. They went to, September intakes, January intakes. They were starting the next step of their lives, and I was very jealous and I was very hurt, and I was like, wow, like all of them are, they're already doing what I want to do, and then some of them have already graduated already, and I'm just like, whoa, like they got to start earlier, they got to graduate earlier. Like, what about me? What did I do wrong? And um some of them didn't even like go to university. Some of them just got jobs immediately after high school or a little bit after high school. And some of them like didn't even do that. They just got married. And I'm just sitting here like, whoa, like how is all of this happening? And one thing that I think your 20s teaches you through experience is that there is a lot of one thing that your 20s kind of really do teach you is that everybody's life path is different. Everyone's going to do different things, and everyone's going to just they're going to do their own thing. They're going to do their own thing, and it's just that's okay. And it's okay to take your own path. It's okay to take your time. It's okay if you want to rush everything. It's okay if you know you just don't want to do what everybody else is doing. You don't want to take the traditional life path. Maybe you want to make your own, and that's completely fine too. I think we are so influenced by society and the people around us, and although that's fine, we don't take the time to think about it really deep down by ourselves and really decide what we want. The most important thing is that you have to decide what you want to do. You have to think about it and be like, okay, I've been told that, I immediately should go to university. Is that really what I want to do? Do I really want to do that? Um, and if you're thinking like, oh, like my parents are not going to be happy, my family's going to be mad, I'm seeing all of my friends go to university and like, they're starting their next step of their lives. They're graduating, they're getting jobs, they're getting married, they're having kids even. Um, that should be me. I should be doing all of that stuff. But you have to think deep down and be like, why? Why do I have to do that too? Is it really what I truly want to do? And if it truly is what you want to do, then great, go ahead, do that. But if it's not, then what's the point in doing it? What's the point in doing something that you're probably gonna regret later? And it's gonna be a harder like mess to get rid of it or get out of it. Then it's easier to prevent than to it's easier to prevent situations than actually be in situations where you have to like later see what you do and have to deal with the consequences that may potentially be negative. Um, so really sit down and think about it and be like, okay, everybody's doing this, but is it what I truly want to do? Society is telling me I have to do this, but is it truly what I deep down want to do? And if it's not, then that's okay. Yes, you're gonna make people mad. Yes, people are not gonna like it. Yes, people might even make fun of you and like be like, "Oh, like you're so stupid. You shouldn't have done that." Yada yada. But at the end of the day, if you're happy with the decisions you're making and you're happy with what you want to do in your future and you are the one making the decisions, you will be happy about it. And even if you're not happy about it, you will have to deal with the consequences, whether they're positive or negative, anyways, right? So it's you who has to deal with it. So you have to think to yourself, like, okay, I want to do this. This is the decision I'm going to make. And whatever comes out of it, like, I have to deal with it, and that's okay. I'm okay with having to deal with the consequences of that, positive or negative. Because nobody else is going to deal with them for you. When you get into a giant mess, ain't nobody gonna come to save you. You have to save yourself, and that's the most important thing. People are like very easy to go like, oh, like get married, it's fine, and we found you someone, and you get married out of pressure because this happens a lot of in Pakistan and in like desi countries where like the woman feels like, or even the men feel like they have to get married, and so they've been presented someone and like, oh, we get married, and then oh, the marriage is we aren't actually compatible, and now it wasn't your choice. It wasn't your choice. You didn't want this. You did this for other people for their sake. And then it all came out to like a giant mess. And who's the one who has to deal with it? You have to deal with the consequences of a decision you didn't even want to make, that you didn't want. And now you have to deal with the consequences. Is that fair? Absolutely not. It's fair when you take the decisions yourself, but when you don't take those decisions yourself, it's not fair. And like, it's just, it's at the end of the day, the one who should be making the decisions is you. You have to deal with the consequences, and you should be happy with the decisions you're making. And you have every right to make your own decisions, especially after you like turn 18. Like, you are in charge of your life, and nobody can take that away from you. To close, I think that, at least in my experience, even though I didn't like not being able to go to university immediately after graduating and then going to university now, and having like, a hard time socializing and so on, what have I learned? I've learned to I went through a very deep emotional journey, figuring out, myself, what my mental health issues were in more detail. And then after figuring that out, realizing I needed therapy, going to therapy, figuring out, all of my trauma and stuff like that, I had the time to truly dissect and think and analyze not only about my emotions and truly understanding them and learning to regulate them, but also my childhood trauma that I had no idea I had, and how it affected me in my daily life, and how now I can work on that so that it doesn't affect me as much. And then, my anxiety and so on. And at the same time, also realizing like to enjoy my own company. Yeah, sometimes I get lonely. Sometimes it gets lonely. It sucks sometimes not having, a friend to go to the movies with, but that's okay. I'm not I'm not like I'm fine being alone. I'm fine in my own company. I like being able to just read a book or watch TikToks on my own or go shopping and grocery shopping by myself. I love grocery shopping. Um, Figuring out that I want to do this in my life. I want to have a podcast and have time to do that, and editing and pictures and all of these different things that I really love. Just figuring out that I love them, because it wasn't that gap year that I realized all of these things and that I wanted to do all of these things in my life at some point. And it was only because of all that time that I had on my hands that I genuinely figured it out. Um, and I'm very grateful for that. Again, sometimes these experiences are not good or they don't feel great, but they're there for a reason. And it is only you who can truly define how you use that time. Um, and hopefully, you do use that time to your benefit, and that you gain something out of it. Um, so yeah, that's really it for today. Thank you so much for stopping by. I really appreciate you. If you have any comments or experiences like on the subject that you would like to share, please leave them down below in the comments, and I would love to read them. And maybe I'll read them out in my next episode. If you don't particularly like videos or you like to multitask, this podcast is on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and any other podcasting platform that you prefer. And if you're listening to this on Spotify or a podcasting platform or an audio platform, this is on YouTube at Digitally Lost, so you can check it out there. Follow my socials to keep up with the updates and other projects that I'm working on. I am an artist and I do a lot of artwork as well, so you can see a lot of that stuff on my Instagram and my TikTok. If you want to work with me, or you want to be featured in a podcast episode, or you have an experience that you want to share that you want me to talk about on the podcast, you can definitely send me an email, which is also in the description below. And that's really it. I hope that you really enjoyed this episode. Again, thank you for stopping by. I really appreciate you. I hope you're doing well. And yeah, stay weird, take care, and until then, bye.